coaches. Today, before we get started, I want to thank our sponsor, CoachPad. No matter if you draw scout cards by hand or use a program on your computer, the CoachPad will give you back time by never stuffing a binder again before heading out to practice. First 13.3-inch electronic device allowing coaches to clearly display scout cards outdoors in the sun has been a game changer for programs this past fall and those currently planned all across the country. This new technology allows coaches to coach and not the monotonous task of stuffing and dealing with binders on the practice field. Check out the CoachPad and CoachPad Mini on thecoachpad.com. Please make sure you check out our sponsors, our affiliates, and here is another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast. Welcome back to another episode of the Gap Down Backer podcast. And I'm probably going to butcher his name as I start this, even though I've practiced it like 4 times already. We have Coach Mike DiMatteo. There we go. Who's currently the assistant coach at Buffalo Grove High School, was the head coach, might be retiring, getting inducted into the Hall of Fame. Coach, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. Doing real good.
Good. Kind of for people who don't know you or not familiar with your background, you want to kind of go through, I mean, you can really view it as how you end up being a Hall of Fame coach there.
Well, yeah, pretty much no one knows who I am. That's okay. I started way back in '87. I started at a Catholic school. And even before then, I actually, if you don't mind, I wrote a book about all of this called Confessions of a High School Football Coach, where I kind of detailed the journey. It's interesting. I wanted to be a football coach, specifically a high school coach, since I was about 12 years old. Our local high school coach, his name was Jack Lease, was the head coach of the Leiden Eagles, and they won the '77 state championship. Those guys were sort of our heroes. And I saw his picture in the paper once, and I thought, man, I really would like to be that guy, So that kind of started the journey. And it's funny, I didn't even want to be involved in football when I was a kid until then. I thought the sport was too rough. And then my mom convinced me to go out and play and try it, and I fell in love. As far as professionally is concerned, I started at St. Pat's High School, and I worked under John Urban. In Illinois, John Urban is extremely well known, very successful coach, and I was fortunate to get a job working with him. I was a major pain in his butt because I called him at all hours, and finally he told me, stop calling me at night, because I just wanted to do this so badly. Worked for a number of really good people, and eventually got my first head coaching job at Leiden. I was there for a year, and then went all the way out to Grays Lake, where I was an assistant for Dan Dillon. In 2000, I got my second opportunity to be a head coach at Lake Zurich High School. And it was then that I decided to call upon an old friendship. It's kind of an interesting story with Jeff Monken. At the time, he was an assistant at Georgia Southern. We were trying to rebuild a program that had won, I think, up until that point, 3 games in 3 years. And there was a lot of issues. Anyway, we needed an identity. And I happened to see the 2000 national championship, 1999-2000 national championship between Georgia Southern and then Paul Johnson was there at the time. And I didn't know Jeff was the slots coach. I didn't know that at the time. And Youngstown State. And I saw the game at the insistence of one of my assistants. And he said, you got to see this team. I've never seen an offense like this before. And it was the spread triple. And literally 3 plays into it, I said, that's what I'm looking to do. Now Jack Lease, way back when, was a wishbone guy. So I had been familiar with the wishbone, but familiar is a very loose term, So through a couple of phone calls, one of them to C. Ray Gregory, who at the time was the head coach at Southern Utah University. He had worked at the same high school that Jeff was working at, that I happened to be at. Again, it's kind of a long story. Anyway, I said, hey, have you seen Jeff recently? He said, yeah, he's at Georgia Southern University. Well, about dropped coffee, books, everything. I just felt honest. You got to be kidding me. I just watched their team and I want to learn that offense. I said, well, here's his number. So I called Jeff. Hey, Mike, so good to hear from you. And next thing you know, he came in, I think it was February of 2001, and spent 14 hours over 2 days clinicking myself and my staff. And that's how we got involved in the spread triple. We were very successful. In year 3, we made the semifinals. Lake Zurich has made the playoffs ever since, including up until this year. I went to Hinsdale Central, and this is where the evolution sort of took place. We had small slots. Hinsdale was an 8A school, so the strong safeties or the alley players were a lot bigger than our slots were. We have 8 divisions in Illinois, and we had a hard time blocking those guys, and you can't cut obviously in Illinois anyway. So I decided, along with our assistants, I said, we got to come up with something that's going to let our little guys run in space some. Yet I still want to be option based. That's what I do. So I decided that we were going to take the offense that's what we call it, the offense, and we were going to move it to the gun. Excuse me. And the problem was I didn't know how to do it. What I didn't know how to do is I didn't know how to get the mesh properly. That's the hard part. And so there was a coach at Springfield, Illinois. His name is Ken Leonard. Ken's in the Hall of Fame. I think he's the all-time winningest coach in the state of Illinois. He kind of pioneered a lot of shotgun stuff way back, when. And so I called him out of the blue. He didn't know me from Adam. And I said, hey, I'd like to talk to you about running some midline out of the gun. And he said, absolutely. He said, where you live? I said, Cary and Springfield, about 3.5 hours apart. And he said, I'll tell you, how about this? How about if I meet you halfway? So he drove an hour and a half, and I drove an hour and a half, and we met in Kankakee. Now, I think about that for a second. That's pretty unbelievable that a man of his stature is going to, willing to drive halfway. Well, we spoke for 3 hours, literally 3 hours on nothing but mesh technique. That's it. And then that's literally all we talked about. And I went back to Hinsdale, and that spring we put it in, or that summer, I should say, we put it in. And it took us a whole summer to get things the way that we wanted them. But that year imagine taking Paul Johnson's offense and just moving the whole thing into the gun. The only difference is you put your slots on our landmarks are hash and then numbers. That's where our landmarks are. And you get a yard play one way or the other. Had to come up with some motions, timing to get slots in the proper pitch relationship. All the rules that you would have, for example, under center, we moved to the gun, except for the mesh. We had to obviously figure out how to do the mesh, and we did with Ken's help. And we were extremely successful that season. We were 7-2 regular season. I don't know why I have this frog. Sorry.
You're good.
7-2 regular season. We won a first round playoff game. We lost the second round playoff game on literally the last 5 seconds of the game. And so we had an outstanding experience. And in 2008, we went to the state championship. I want to say, if memory serves, and I could be wrong, but we were pretty damn close, if not into about 5,000 yards offense that season.
Okay.
It was pretty damn effective, and we had tweaked a couple things. I mean, the offense is really based off of 4 plays, but it's all option based, and we had some great success. And then when I went to Buffalo Grove, we kind of did the same thing. This year we were 9-2, and in the spring COVID season we were 5-1 for the last 3 years. So it's been a really great adjustment. I've learned a lot, and I've been asked about it a lot, and I've tried to help people learn it. But that's kind of my evolution of the whole thing. And to my knowledge, I mean, we were doing zone triple, but true triple way back in 2007 before anybody kind of even thought about that, at least as far as I can tell. And it was really fun learning it, and it's a very effective offense. I like it better than the pistol. I think if you're going to be in the pistol, why not just be under center? That's just my attitude. So if you're gonna if you're gonna do it, either be in the gun or be under center. That's just the way I see it. and it's been extremely successful for us and offers us a lot of advantages, a lot of things that you can do, all option based. But if you have a kid that's maybe a better thrower that one particular year, you can maybe emphasize that piece. In other words, it doesn't just lock you into certain things. And I still think under center triple is phenomenal, but I also think that to a certain degree, it's just a little bit limited. But you look at Cary Grove here in Illinois, who just won their second or third state championship, and they're all under center.
Yeah.
So I think it just comes down to what you want to get out of the offense. But for us, and in my career anyway, the gun triple has been outstanding.
Now, before we kind of get into like true triple stuff, I mean, you mentioned your book there, which I'll put the link to that in the bio. But me and you talked a little bit before we came on. I mean, you wrote the Confessions of a High School Football Coach, and part of that in there is your relationship with not only Jeff Monken, but your relationship with all the Monkens pretty much.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You want to kind of expand on kind of what you've been able to take from the Monkens. I mean, obviously Jeff's runs a triple at Army and all that, but what you've been able to take from them over the years and kind of integrate into not only the triple, but kind of your coaching style and how you coach.
Well, it's funny. Tony Monken is Jeff's cousin. And Tony and I started, Tony actually started the football program at Vernon Hills. They didn't even have one. And so when I started learning all this, I think it was Tony's first year, maybe his second year, maybe. And Jeff kind of hooked us up. And so we started talking with each other, heck, almost daily, I think. And we, because of that relationship, developed a very close friendship. I consider him a brother. During those years, especially when I was at Lake Zurich, the one thing I think that I got from Tony, Tony's got a vast football knowledge. Every time I'm around him, I walk away thinking, man, I don't really know anything about this game. He's just got a vast amount of knowledge, and he's extremely detail oriented. But his knowledge of defense, and that's the one thing that I think as an offensive coach, we sometimes overlook the fact that we need to be knowledgeable about defense, almost a defensive coordinator. For my career, I was a DC, but Tony was one of the best. So I've learned from him the importance of just understanding defense. And I don't mean to say that, I just drew up X's and O's and hoped it worked. My point is studying defense as much as you study offense. And the other thing I think that I've learned from Tony is, I don't know if I can say it on a podcast, but he used to call me Coach 10-fucker. I'd be squeezing so hard before games, and he would just be so relaxed. And the thing that I learned from him is that if you can relax, you can think. When you get so wrapped up, you just can't think. And as a young, fiery coach that I was, in terms of game night, et cetera, I learned to just kind of relax. And the more relaxed I was, the better game I called. And he's been really good for me in that regard. His brother is as far as I'm concerned, a wizard on defense. That's Teddy. He's an outstanding defensive mind. So the three of us get together fairly often, and talk always turns into football. The next thing you know, napkins are flying all over the table, and honestly, in many instances, I'm a spectator. It's fun to listen to, and I truly believe that you can listen. The more you can listen, the more you can learn. I'll put my 2 cents in there too. But my point is, it's always great to listen to great coaches. And as I told you earlier, we have a fourth coach in that mix. His name is Bill Modelski. He's in the Hall of Fame also. So the four of us have a little club we call the Rocked Club, ROCED, retired old coaches eating and drinking. And when we get together, we have a great time. It's like an impromptu clinic, but it's always fun. And I always come away learning something. And I think, it's funny. I talked to Tony the other day, and I said, you can watch that LSU game? They got so many guys out. He said, yeah. And I said, let me ask you why. And he said, because I can always learn something. how to use person. I can always figure out to learn something. And it just reinforces, when you talk to people like that, it just constantly reinforces your own set of beliefs, or makes you question certain things. And that's a good thing, I think. Sometimes people get too comfortable. And so I'm always looking to learn something new and listen to something new and or reaffirm what I think is right or wrong. And Tony and I do that with each other all the time. He'll call me, hey, how do you do this? And I'll tell him what I think, and I'll do the same to him. So it's been a great relationship.
Now, I mean, you also mentioned there at the beginning that you kind of had to figure out the mesh when you switched from understanding again. What exactly did you have to figure out? And what did you figure out? I know it's probably a long, convoluted.
No, it is, man. It's funny. I just did a clinic for the Illinois High School Football Coaches Association, and my whole clinic was literally just on mesh. And I think it's one of the big misconceptions about gun option football is, and I'm talking true triple now, downhill triple. I'm not talking about zero, zone triple. I'm talking about true triple. Is it hits too slow? It hits too slow. You can't do it out of the gun. It hits too slow. We run inside veer, we run midline, and believe it or not, we run outside veer from the gun, and have been very effective with it. And it all has to do with the mesh. So a lot of times when guys are trying to do the mesh, because they can't get it to time up properly with the snap of the ball, the quarterback meshing, the running back getting downhill, what do? They typically move the running back a yard. Okay, now that may be okay in college. Maybe. I say maybe, because those are collegiate athletes. But high school kids, not so much. It is going to hit slow. So we had to figure out a way. When you're under center, your quarterback's, I'm sorry, your B-back's heels are at 5. How do you get in the gun your quarterback and your B-back to mesh when both of their heels are at 5 yards? How do you do it? And that was the biggest problem, biggest hurdle we had to overcome. Because when the ball is snapped, when the running back starts going downhill, the quarterback gets the ball, he takes a step, while the running back is typically past him, which means he's going to be reaching forward to try to get a mesh. And then it's not a mesh. And the ball winds up on the ground. Everybody's yelling at each other. Kids feel bad. Dogs and cats are fighting. Everybody starts to cry. So we had to figure out how to do that. And there is a secret to it. And the secret is there's 3 parts, actually. The first part is the ball has to be snapped on the tee and set. So our cadence is ready, set, go. And on the tee and set, the ball is on its way back. The second part of it is when you get to the tee and set, the quarterback has to attack that ball downhill. So as the ball's coming back to him, he's attacking the ball, and that shrinks the amount of time that the ball is actually in the air. The third thing is, and I like offset backs. I don't necessarily like behind the quarterback, although we have a formation called cannon. We'll do that. We bump our quarterback up a half yard, and the B back is still at 5.
Yeah,
still at 5, because you got to have consistency for your kids. So it almost winds up like, they're like this.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Like almost touching each other. But I like offset for a whole lot of reasons. Anyway, as the quarterback is attacking downhill, the B back takes a slide step, and then he goes downhill, and his aiming point is exactly the same as it would be under center, inside leg of the play side guard. And then once the quarterback gets the ball, he snaps the ball right back. The teaching point to that is if it's running inside here to the right, we would call it 12. His right hand is attached to his right hip. As soon as his right hip turns, his right hand turns, and he old school, ride and decide, put the ball back into the B back, ride him through. So we had to figure that out. And there was a number of footballs that were on the ground before, we actually figured that out and figured out how to teach it. And that's the key. And it's a 3-step process, which we were able to develop, called soft squeeze. And once we did that, things sort of fell into place. So if you teach the mesh properly, it's a beautiful thing to see. It really is. It's fun to watch. But to my mind, having done it since 2007, it's all about the mesh. When you get that, the rest of it falls into place. And all the rules, blocking wise, by the way, are the same. Scheme wise, they're all the same. If you want to, it doesn't matter what scheme you run. It's when I gave the clinic, I said, if you guys want me to talk scheme, I'll talk scheme all damn day. But everybody's got scheme. The question is, how do you get from point A to point B? How does that ball get into the B-back's belly and mesh it? And that's why I spent that hour talking about mesh.
Okay. I mean, that's actually really great stuff. I mean, that's fantastic. I mean, you mentioned another blocking rules change. So not a single, you didn't have to change a single thing. It's single rule.
Nothing.
Okay.
All the rules that I learned from Jeff way back in 2000 that Paul Johnson did, they're all the same. Now you can tweak them. Like I have he's another really good option football coach in Illinois. His name is Mark Browns. He does a really nice down block and pull with the center scheme against a one technique, which is kind of interesting. And he, my point is there's a lot of ways to do it, but if you're going to talk about, Irk Russell and, Paul Johnson and Tim Stowers and their rules, nothing changes. Nothing changes. It's all the same stuff. The key is the mesh.
Now, I mean, obviously you changed the mesh point, and you changed, I think you said your splits of your slot backs. Are those really the mesh and the slot backs really the main, and the motions the main thing you had to figure out?
Yeah, that's it. Because you got to figure out the timing, So for our motion, for example, for our slots, how do you get your slot who's on the hash? How do you get him in the proper pitch relationship? And, without sounding like a jerk, practice. But for us, the way that we got to that point is, and I kind of came up with this when I was at Lake Zurich, and I kind of like it. What we'll do is so if we're going to run inside veer to the right, we'll take our left slot and we will have him jog. The quarterback will send him in motion, and he literally jogs to that spot one by one off the tackle. And once he hits that spot, he bursts. And the reason I like that is because it changes the timing for the DBs. If they're following and then all of a sudden the B-back or the slot bursts, now he's a step behind. So it's kind of like, I don't know what it's like really. It's just how we do it. And then he gets himself in pitch relationship, and then we run our offense. When does he go? When the ball is snapped. There is a timing between. Boy, that sounded ridiculous. When the ball snapped. Well, of course he's going to go when the ball snapped. That was dumb. But there's a timing between the quarterback when he snaps the ball and the A-back or the slot that's in motion. And honestly, that comes with practice. And you literally have to take the time to time that out. And what we found was that every slot is different. So one kid might be faster than another kid. So he might get into pitch relationship a little bit differently than another kid. And that literally is reps. So everybody does the 3-ball drill, I'm sure, when you're running your handoff and your pitch and all that, everybody does the 3-ball drill. Well, we do it from our slots being in the slot position, and we run the 3-ball drill until we get it right. And it's just literally reps. And what's interesting is kids figure it out. So here's another little thing that I do differently. Or did differently, or did. I'm not sure yet, right? Because I'm not sure whether I'm going to retire. I don't use cones or landmarks for our pitchbacks. A lot of guys like to use cones and that kind of stuff, run to the cone 4x1. I don't like that. And the reason I don't like it is because there aren't any cones on a football field. So I want them to be able to make those adjustments based on sight and based on where they're at. And our rule is you keep going lateral till the quarterback turns up. When he turns up, you turn up. We like your distance to be 4 yards. And we don't want you to be we don't want you to be 1 yard deep, 4 yards wide. We don't want that. I want the ball pitched laterally. Why pitch it backwards a yard? Then he's got to run an extra yard just to get 0. I don't want that. I want him running downhill all the time. So we try to pitch literally laterally so that every step he takes, he gains air. We call it gain ground. I got that from Jeff years ago. Gain ground. Every step you got to gain ground. And that's really where you get a lot of your big plays off of the pitch. If you think about it, if you pitch backwards and a kid's got to run 3 yards to get to the line of scrimmage, well, that's 3 yards he could have been going forward. So we teach lateral pitch. Now, the only exception to that is if we get a blood stunt. If we get a blood stunt, then we have no choice. Quarterbacks had to get rid of the ball, pitch it, and you get what you get. But usually if they blood stunt you and you do things right in the edge, you're in really good shape. Sometimes we'll run
term blood stunt there. It's like the universal name for a stunt to stop the triple. Like anytime I've ever tried to stop triple, blood. It's like,
yeah, right,
exactly. Hilarious.
The other thing we will run a formation that we call a deuce, where you take both your backs or both of your slots and put them in the backfield. Then you'll have, so you might have, let's say, a slot right formation, a wide receiver to the left, and then you'll have your quarterback and then two backs offsetting on either side. And we'll run triple from there too. Or midline lead, or midline triple. Midline triple was big for us this year, huge for us this year. Out of the gun, we faced a lot of odd defenses this year. We ran the hell out of midline triple. Had a lot of success with it.
Now you also mentioned a little bit there, like drills. And I've always wondered this because I coached on a bad triple offense for 1 year. Where do you guys focus for drills? And then what does kind of like practice look like for like an established, what it would be under center or gun team? What does that kind of like week of a practice look like?
Well, for us, we're big. When I was the head coach, I was a really big believer in part whole. So we would do every day, for example, whether we're under center or whether we're in the gun, we do what we call a mesh drill every single day for 15 minutes. And we'll do 10-minute pre-practice and then 15-minute drill time. So that's 25 minutes of just mesh. And the reason is because my quarterback has to get a look at all the different kinds of stunts that he's going to be looking at, whether it's that week's opponent or whether it is, for example, in summer camp, we just run through them all, whether it's stack stunt, easy stunt, blood stunt, whatever the case may be. So we always do part whole. Our offensive line will be doing their EDDs, everyday drills, and we're always doing mesh. And our slots will rotate from receiver drills or stock drills to coming over with us. And then the second thing we'll do, second phase of that, would be a group set where we would take our slots and our B back, and then we'll work our triple drills, or we'll work our counter drills, or maybe our bubble game or something like that. And again, the offense, that's a whole nother segment for the offensive line. And that would probably be around 15 minutes. And then we'll do inside run. And sometimes we will go half line, but most of the time not. And our inside run period is 10 minutes. It's not full blast, kill everybody. We're not trying to do that. We're not trying to get people hurt. There are bags and there are shields, or we used to use the arm, like the yellow arm shields, those kinds of things. And then we go to team, and put the whole thing together. And then each day is different. So for example, Monday is a walkthrough day. If we play on Friday, Tuesday, we'll do inside veer in midline or midline triple, whatever the case may be. Wednesday, we'll sprinkle those in, but then that'll be our counter game day. And of course we have a segment for passing, whatever we're going to do that day. And then Thursday, we just walk through. Then Friday we go in with any luck. So, it's a pretty programmed thing, and to some people it may seem kind of boring. We don't do things like one day we have like a trick play day or anything like that. Some guys like it because it keeps things fresh. Our attitude is we're going to drill, and drill. And the fun part comes on Friday nights when you win. And listen, 25 minutes of mesh, and the various variations off of that can be kind of boring. And so for my guys, I came up with a drill, champions, or a statement. And the statement is champions don't get bored. There's always something you can fix. And we typically, however, we don't really go over 2 hours if we can. At most 2 hours and 15 minutes. I think after that you get diminishing returns. I know some guys still go 3 hours. And when I was a young coach, in summer camp, we had triples, and then it was just diminishing returns. Over the years, I've modified that. But I think that if you go part whole, you can get a lot out of your players, and make sure you get your twos reps, those kinds of things. That's all kind of built into that.
Okay. No, and then I mean, you also mentioned odd fronts right there, and I think most I think actually just most teams in general are moving to some variation of an odd front,
I agree.
Even if it looks like an even front, it's still a like hybrid player probably at one of the ends. How's that caused you to evolve or modify? I mean, you mentioned mid triple was a big play for you this year.
Right.
How does it cause you to evolve or adjust things as a result?
The rules for true triple option football are they're pretty standard, and they fit pretty much everything. So in terms of running true triple, whether it's midline, inside veer, outside veer, there's not been a whole lot that's been modified other than running, for example, midline in a one technique. So sometimes you might get maybe an offset nose. What we call anything that isn't directly over. This is my terminology. Anything that isn't directly over the center, we'll call a one technique. No, that's just, or I take that back. We'll call them a zero shade. That's what I meant to say. We'll call them a zero shade. Zero shade right, zero shade left. And I still subscribe to the old count system that gets beat up all the time on Twitter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 5, 7, 6, 9. That's me. It's because I'm 58 years old and I'm old. And if the bear did it, everybody, I don't know that I subscribe to that, but it's just what I learned, and it's what I've always done. And kids will learn anything as long as you teach it to them. So they don't care. So one of the things that we've done though is teams will like if we have midline called, we used to pair it up with inside veer. So midline to the 3, inside veer to the 1. But good defensive coordinators can kind of figure that out. And so what we decided to do, one of the modifications that we made was, if we're going to run midline, for example, to the right, we would call that 10, and we get a zero shade or we get a 1. We call the quarterback will tell the B back, he'll just say to him, wrap. And what that means is we down block with the play side guard, combo with the center. The B back meshes, but he's going to hug that combo and get vertical, and the quarterback's going to keep it and follow him. So it becomes quarterback follow is what it becomes. Okay. That's just a really good way to throw a wrench into that particular scheme and still get your midline action. Plus you get that extra player on the linebacker. So little tweaks like that. But in terms of really running the triple, for me anyway, the rules haven't really changed all that much. What we added at Hinsdale when we started running all this though, our run game consisted basically of 4 schemes, and that's pretty much it. Our inside veer and midline, and we kind of count that as one scheme because it's such a big part of what we do. Then we ran counter tray triple with the bubble. So imagine running counter tray to the right, but your left slot bubbles. So the quarterback's going to read the 5 tech. If the 5 tech comes down, wants to follow the counter tray, quarterback pulls it, and he's on number 2. Number 2 wants to take the quarterback, then we throw the bubble on the run to number 3. We started doing that in 2007. And then the third one, we used to call it our outplay. If for whatever reason we were getting inside pressure, or for whatever reason we had a hard time, and especially the linebackers. We had a hard time. Then we would run zone triple. And then we would just pick everybody up. So those are our base 4: midline, inside veer, counter tray triple, and then zero. Those are the 4 and we had variations off of some of that. One problem we found in the summertime was that if the 5 tech came down hard and the linebacker scraped behind him, we had a really hard time with zero. So we came up with a solution for that. So those kinds of things, but everybody can come up with their own tweaks. As far as our offense is concerned, those were the base 4.
Okay. Now, like 3 more questions for you is, first, I mean, I'm always curious about this, and I really have never really cared what offense it is, but what do you tell your box guy to look for? What is that communication like on Fridays for what they're specifically telling you? And because everybody's a little different, but for your offense, for what you're looking for.
So when you say box guys, are you talking about the guard box?
I know I'm talking about the press box.
Oh, upstairs. Okay. So
Yeah.
that's actually a really, really good question. When I was actually the box guy for the last 3 years, and it was as our OC was learning the offense. When I was on the field, I always had three guys up there actually. I had one guy specifically looking for the backside linebacker. Specifically, one guy and I'll tell you why in a second. One guy looking at, like everybody does, secondary rotation. And then the third guy was looking at the front side linebacker. The defensive line, myself and the offensive line coach who was on the field, we take care of that. But the most important guy is whoever is watching the back, and it's boring for those guys. Everybody wants to get caught up in watching the game. But here's the key: if you're going to be a successful, to my mind anyway, if you're going to be a successful triple option team, you have got to have a counter game. I don't care how you do the counter game. I don't care whether it's from the gun you want to run RPO counter. I call that a counter. To me, that's a counter. You want to run quarterback counter. You want to run what Paul Johnson used to call 18-19. Option guys that might be listening to this know that play. You've got to have a counter game. We ran when I was under center counter ISO. It was actually counter ISO trap. And it was a great play for us. If you don't have that, your option game is going to be dead in the water, to my mind, unless you're just overpowering. So that guy in the box that is concentrating on whoever the backside linebacker is, that guy will kill an option team every single time. If you don't get a handle on him, he tells me when that guy's coming hard front side. That cues our counter game. Okay. Again, there's a number of different ways to do it. We had something we called a shoot pass in the backside W or X. That was our terminology for him to take care of that guy. Rotating cover to safety. We had a backside pass for that guy. So you've got to be able to counter what they're doing in terms of getting people to the front side of the play. And that guy was huge. So secondary rotation guy, backside linebacker guy, front side linebacker guy. That's what we had. And then I took care of the offensive line with the O-line coach.
Okay. Let's see, that's why I asked the question, because everybody's different. Every offense is a little different what they look for. And
absolutely. And
I think that's something we really struggled with this year was figuring out the press box situation.
Well, the hard part is, I think, and this is just from my experience over the years, a lot of times guys will put the most inexperienced guys up in the box because, maybe they don't have the rapport with the kids yet or something like that. But if you do that, to my mind, again, this is just me. Now what you're doing is you're taking a really good weapon out of your arsenal. You should have maybe your most experienced guy up there. So for us at Buffalo Grove the last 3 years, I was the box guy, which, by the way, I really enjoyed because I was tired of being on the sidelines and dealing with the weather, although we didn't have such bad weather. But I could help our OC because I knew what he was looking for on every play because it's what I would be looking for. And I was teaching the system. And it worked out really, really well. And ROC's a fine young offensive coordinator. He's going to be really, really good. It was a really good opportunity for me to get a different view of the whole thing too. So my advice would be for any OC that might be listening, whether they're an option football guy or not, it's maybe the experienced guy he likes being on the field. Well, we got to win games. And I would say take your experienced guy and put him up there. Because that eye in the sky is huge. It can solve a lot of problems and, see things that on the field you just flat can't see.
Okay. Now, I mean, you've hit on a lot of it already, but I got two parts of this. One, from a play calling perspective, are you more Mike Leach and Paul Johnson to where it's all on a note card or in your head, or are you big play call sheet? And then how is the play call preparation throughout the week look for you as you prepare for a team? Obviously you might get some fronts you've not seen before and all that lovely jazz, but kind of what does that process look like? So
I am never use a play call sheet guy. because it honestly, it just confuses the hell out of me. I'll take the time during the week. That's the other beauty of running option football. You don't need there. To my mind, there's two kinds of offenses. This is just me. Okay. I hope I don't offend anybody out there, but there's two, and it drives me completely insane, especially watching the pros more than anything. But there's two kinds of offenses. There's a system offense, and then there's what I like to call the collection of plays offense. And the collection of plays offense is, hey, this is I saw this really cool play. We got to put that in. I mean, that can go on endlessly because there's so many brilliant minds out there. But especially at the high school level, and I think it works at the collegiate level as well, because at least my collegiate experience, it was one of the things that needed to happen, I think. When you have a system, in that system, typically you're going to have an if this, then that ideal that goes with it. So for me, in option football, you do this, I'm doing that. I have an answer. I don't have to search through, 1,000 plays in a playbook, or 75 plays on a play sheet. You're doing this, I'm doing this. The other rule that we go by is this. I can't take credit for it. This comes from Jeff Monkens, specifically from Paul Johnson, and I learned it in 2000, and it's served me well ever since. Do not change the play, change the formation. If you're going to be an option team, you can use formations to your advantage to get you back to inside veer, for example. Now, inside veer is kind of going out of favor with a lot of guys. They're actually running more, zone dive kind of stuff, and midline triple, and zone speed. I'm a dinosaur, but I'm going to find a way. I'm finding a way to get back to inside veer. One way or the other, that's what we're doing, because that's what we hang our hat on. And there's a lot of ways to do it, but the first way is to change the formation, not the play. And I think that can go for any offense. When I was multiple I many years ago, that mantra I did not have. And so what did I have? I had this massive collection of plays that may or may not have all fit together. And I didn't really have an if this, then that ideal. I had, okay, that play didn't work. Let's try this one. Now you're grab bagging a little bit. And to me, the beauty of option football, whether it's the system that we developed or the system that, under center, it's very much a system. And I think that's really, really important. So when I'm game planning, I'm going to fall back on our system. This is what we do. We're going to bet that what we practice every single day since the summer, we're going to be better than you can figure it out in 3 days. And when we're going to go, what I will do then for my game planning is, and I might do it a little bit differently. I'm not sure. And you're right. You do get a bunch of junk fronts and all that. That's what we call them, junk fronts, defense of the week, because they're playing an option team. In my experience, I found the best teams don't do that. The toughest teams for us to deal with really don't do junk fronts. But having said that, the way that I approach it is I will find common formations. So let's say I have 3 films on you. I'm going to find the common formations that the teams you played against, we run. So everybody runs trips. I want to see how you align to trips. And I want to see how you're going to play cover 2 to trips, or are you going to play cover 4? Are you going to play, quarter, half? What are you going to do to trips? And I'm going to keep track of it. Then I'm going to look for spread. What do you do against spread? Then I'm going to look for some sort of unbalanced formation. We love to run unbalanced formations. And if you think about it, trips is really an unbalanced formation. What are you going to, how are you going to align? What is your tendency against these formations? And then what's your possible tweak? What could you do from your base? Now, if you're a junk front guy, you can tell that. You can tell that as you watch film. But most defensive coordinators have a tendency. And what's really interesting, and one of the things that I learned over the years, and I learned it from a really good offensive mind. His name is Jamie Pass. you may play cover two, and the team that we're playing this week may not be you, but they play cover two, but they play different. You know, they may align their guys a little bit differently. They may have maybe I saw some guys, they play their cover two corner or the cover two safety outside the hash. Now, to me, that's a big deal to me. Some guys will never leave the hash. So how do you play cover two? You know, and I want to know that. And that's going to help me formulate what I'm going to do for the week. And we keep it simple. We run our base. Our passing system is designed to be very, very flexible. We don't use concepts. I actually tell every receiver what I want them to do, the way that we do it. But they have to know intrinsically how to run their route based on what the guy next to them, the outside kid next to them, is doing. And we have 3 different releases as to how to get to that point, because spacing is a really, really big deal. But we limit our quarterback. You know, you're reading one guy. That's it. So you peek your deep shot, and then if that guy's not there on the second step, then you come right down to your read. You know, and then our gift route is on the backside. So that's kind of how we'll do it. Most of it is based on formation. How do you align? And then once you're in that formation, how do you play cover two? How do you know, what are your coverages out of that formation? Then I'll formulate a game plan, or, you know, we will formulate a game plan based on that. I don't know. Did that make any sense at all?
No, it is actually perfect. Seriously. Like I'm just soaking it all in, and I'll probably end up taking a bunch of notes when I re-listen this to edit it. That's fantastic. And I think you can take that from not just, as you kind of mentioned, not just from gun triple or understand triple, but you could use that for
anything.
Whatever offense you're running.
Well, one of the things that I found interesting is when I coached collegiately, and again, some of the guys listening to this might think that I'm completely out of my mind, but sometimes you can watch too much film, and you get to the point where, you know, I watched the safety step forward with his right foot on Thursday, you know, and something triggered. We got to put in a tag for that. Next thing you know, your entire offense is nothing but tags, and you're adding things, and then you're adding things on a Thursday, you know, and kids aren't going to remember that, you know, and even collegiately, kids can't remember that. And so, to my mind, we're going to try to keep things as consistent as possible. You know, whatever we're going to put in on it, you know, the last day we put anything in is on a Tuesday. And we're going to be very methodical as to how we game plan, but it all revolves around our core. You know, all of it revolves around our core. And that's why running ball wise, everything is an option game with us, everything. So I don't know if that, again,
no, that's fantastic. Seriously.
That might be different, but.
And then the last question I have for you, because I mean, I would be an idiot not to ask. You have coached for 35 years, and even though I've coached for 11, there's a vast much more wisdom that you can impart on me or any other coach that listens to this, and I'd be a fool not to ask. Is there any lessons or things you've taken away from coaching for 35 years that you want to pass? That any good advice, anything you pass on to whether it be head coaches, assistant coaches, coordinator? I mean, that doesn't really matter, but any advice you would like to pass on?
Cool. You know, things that I've learned as well. One of them is for all of us to remember that we might be, especially in this particular game, we might be the only positive influence in a young person's life. We don't know what goes on outside of the field sometimes and in people's home lives. And maybe we're not supposed to know, but what we can know is the experience that we give them on the field. And that does not mean, you know, be soft with them. It's not what it means. Because I think if you're going to be successful, there have to be expectations. If we do not have expectations, people will typically sink to the lowest common denominator. And it's our job is in this particular sport. I can't speak for other sports, although I coach track and I have expectations there too. We need to get kids to raise their level of expectation. There's lots of ways to do it. But we need to remember that at the end of the day, especially for high school and even in college, I think, we need to remember that a lot of times we might be the only positive influence in their lives. And if we keep that perspective, I think that we'll be better coaches for it. And that, again, that doesn't mean somebody screws up, they should be disciplined. Then we have to, hold our expectations, but discipline doesn't necessarily mean grabbing people by the face mask and screaming in their face. And, what it means is hold to a standard. There's a lot of kids out there, especially now, unfortunately, that are struggling. And in some cases, football and athletics in general can be an oasis for them, and I think that's a positive thing. In my early days, I used to be a screamer because I didn't know how to coach. And what you'll find, in my opinion, over my experiences, the guys that scream and holler all the time typically don't know their sport the way they're supposed to. The guys that really do have that quiet confidence. Listen, I'll get on you now, but I'll get on you for lack of effort. That's what I'll get on you for, because that's the one thing we can control. We can definitely control our effort. I think that's probably the biggest thing I've learned over the years, and I think the last thing for me was and I learned this from Tony, I can't take credit for it, way or less, be a technician. If you're an assistant, forget about your head coach, your head coaching job in the future. Be an assistant, man, and be the best assistant you can be, and be a technician. George Baglione, who I worked for many years ago, instilled that upon me, and Tony just reinforced it. You got to be a technician. If you're a wide receivers coach, learn how to teach get-offs. Is the kid going to take a Top Gun release? Is he not? Does he need to take a burst release on this route because the outside kid is doing this, or is it an attack release? Where does he put his hands to make the best possible opportunity for him to catch the ball? Be the best technician you can be. The rest of that stuff falls into place. But in the end, whether it's collegiately or whether it's high school, it's about our players. It's about kids. And I think the same holds true, maybe even all the way up to the NFL. I have right now one former player of mine that's in the league, and I've had, I think, 4 total. And in the end, at the end of the day, it's still a game, and they're grown ass men, but they're still people too. And so I think that a couple of those things are important.
That's perfect, Coach. So I'm gonna wrap it up. Coaches, first, I mean, follow him on Twitter. I'll put that in the bio. Check out his book. Put the link for that as well.
And anybody I can help. I'm an open book, man. Send me an email, spreadoffense@gmail.com.
And I'll put that in the you said spreadoffense@gmail.com.
Spreadoffense@gmail.com. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm happy to help.
I'll put that in the bio as well, coaches. So you can just copy and paste that in there. Go ahead and shoot Coach. Like I said, Coach was very gracious to come on and got back to me very quickly after he got recommended. Like I said, make sure you check all that out. Again, thank you for liking, sharing, subscribing, listening to the podcast, all that lovely stuff. And that was another episode of Gap Down Backer Podcast.